God is in this house. Absolutely in this house. I am here today by the grace of God. And I'd like to start out by saying that you all look fantastic. And remind you also of the fact that on the 7th of October, we are distributing the Great Controversy book. Because whether we like it or not, we all are engaged in this great controversy. There is no way any one of us can stand in the middle and hold the middle ground. You either for or against. There is no other stand. You need to know what you stand for. You need to have a position. When people see you, do they see you as a threat or do they see you as a weakling? That is the question when it comes to the great controversy. The battle lines are drawn. So please, on the 7th of October, join the church to distribute that book, The Great Controversy. I chose the topic, Take Comfort in the Truth. Take comfort in the truth. For the Lord himself will fight for you. You need only to be still. Brothers and sisters, I'd like to begin by saying that there is no storm that God won't carry you through. No bridge that God won't help you cross. No battle that God won't help you win. In every circumstances, trust God. From biblical history, it is quite clear that whenever God fights for an individual or a group of people, God always wins. God has never fought a battle and never lost any battle. He wins. At times, though, it might appear that you are fighting alone. But let me tell you this. There is a divine factor in victory. In warfare engagements, there is always a divine factor. When we allow God to fight for us, we will surely win. Not that we, of course, fold our hands and do nothing. Nobody fights a war by folding their hands. Nobody. We are supposed to rely on God. We are supposed to trust him with our battles. We are supposed to commit our warfare with him. We are supposed to follow his strategies. And we shall surely win with God in every battle that we face as a church and as families as well as individuals. That I can assure you. In Psalms 33 verses 16 to 17, it reads, "There is no king saved by a multitude of soldiers. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. A horse is a vain thing for safety. Neither shall he deliver any one of us by his great strength." Who are you depending on? Winning the battles of life is not a function of human might or capability, It is amazing how at times, when we look at the past, we see feeble and weak nations overpowering and winning over strong and mighty nations. Strong nations were defeated by the less privileged and weaker nations. Let's take 3 instances when God fought for his people and they won in spite of the opposing military might that came against them. For instance, the first battle I'd like us to consider is the battle of the yet-to-be-a-nation people of Israel and the mighty Egyptian army. God had afflicted the Egyptians with 10 plagues, and the last one was very memorable in the minds of anyone who has the firstborn as a child. And the Egyptians then decided, enough is enough. Let them go. And the Israelites marched out victorious, or so they thought. Because soon after they left, some of the men, the generals of the Egyptian army, went to Pharaoh. And they said, "You don't know what you just did. Our economy will not survive what you've done. The best you can do is to follow them." Yes, these things have happened and they've claimed they happened by the power of God. But God is not it. It's might that matters. Let us go after them. And so Pharaoh redirected his forces, reconsidered his decision, and said, "Let's follow." And they followed them. And at this moment, the Israelites were near the sea, the Red Sea. And on both sides of them was a mountain. And Pharaoh looked at this and said, "Moses is a poor strategist. How could he lead people to this place? Go after them." And the Israelites looked and saw the chariots of Pharaoh coming. And they looked at Moses and they lost faith in the leadership of Moses. "How can this man lead us here?" they said. "There's no turning back. What shall we do?" They decided now to turn on Moses. And this is what it looked like. Moses had led them into a dead-end valley. They had no weapons. They were not people of war. They were simply slaves. What a blunder. And when Pharaoh heard this, he said, "They are returning with us. Why did you lead us here, Moses? Were there no graves in Egypt? Why didn't you leave us alone? We were better off as slaves." And look at the verses 1 and 2 of Exodus 14. Shows it was not a blunder by Moses. It was God who had led them into this trap. Now, why would God lead his people into such an obvious trap? Clearly, God must have wanted to demonstrate his glory to the people everywhere in the world and his mighty power to the Egyptian soldiers and Pharaoh. And he wanted to teach valuable lessons to the Israelites. For you see, if God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, it doesn't matter who stands against us. One of us, with God in his or her heart, is a majority that counts. Moses, seeing the Egyptians coming, responded as follows. Moses said to the Israelites, "Fear not." And the Israelites probably thought to themselves, "Oh good, Moses has a plan." Moses then responded to them saying, "Stand still and be brave." Oh no, he is crazy. And we were crazy allowing him to drag us here, they thought. Moses continued, "See the salvation of the Lord. These Egyptians who you see here today, you will see no more ever again." Now Moses at this time was simply trying to encourage the Israelites. He was simply using his faith. Why? Because God had not yet revealed the plan. So he was trying to urge them on, to make them believe. Well, the Lord, Moses said, "Today will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." These words sounded very somber. But Moses then decided to pray. For Moses knew the fact that when God guides, God provides. And so he started to pray. And God answered him in this way: "Why do you keep crying to me, Moses? Stop with the crying. Why don't you order the children of Israel to move forward? Strike the water with your staff." And Moses did exactly that. And the waters of the Red Sea opened, and there was a path in the middle. As the children of Israel walked into the water, the cloud that always followed them suddenly moved from the above their heads and into the back. And it engrossed the army of the Egyptians with a very dark fog. They couldn't see each other. Whilst at the same time, we see the fire of God leading the children of Israel through that particular sea. Well, the Israelites were surprised at this. How is it they are not following? How is it like they look as if they were in trouble? In fact, the Bible tells us they were in trouble. Because as they were in that darkness, trying to move the chariots forward, God tells us in his word that it was as if the wheels of the chariots were stuck in the ground. And the children of Israel moved slowly throughout that night. And when the morning comes, it was discovered that the Egyptians had followed them. And in following them, God then allowed the waters of the Red Sea to come together again and swallowed them up. My Bible tells me that Miriam, on the other side, the sister of Aaron, took her tambourine and led the other women of Israel out to play with their tambourines. And the lyrics of the song she sang are as follows: "Sing praises for God's great victory. He has thrown the horse and the riders into the sea. Let us sing a song of praise. The second instance I want to show you that God uses small nations to destroy large ones is the instance of Gideon's army. Gideon was called a valiant man by God. But those who know the story know that Gideon actually was not a valiant man. But God gave him the courage, and he called men, and Israel responded. In Judges chapter 7, verses 2 to 7, it is said there that the Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver you from Midian with these men, because if I do, Israel will boast against me and will say they did this on their own strength. Now announce to the men that anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 20,000 men left immediately, while 10,000 remained. Then God said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out there by the waters. If I say to this one, 'He shall go,' you will let him go. If I say to this one, 'Stay,' you shall let him stay." So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, "Separate those who lap the waters by the cup of their hands from those who kneel down and drink." Those who drank with the cup of their hands, lapping the water with their tongues, were God's men. Isn't that strange? You see, when you go to war, you don't drink water looking back. When you go to war, you say, "Let them come. But now I'm thirsty," and you take it by the cup, for you know the battle is not yours. Well, Gideon did as God told him. And the Lord said to Gideon, "All the rest who got down on their knees to drink, let them go. Let them go home. I will save you and give Midian into your hands. Let all the others go." And Gideon was left with 300 men, and the battle was won. The third story I'd like to tell you about that shows how God deals with these matters is that of King Asa, who had an army of 300,000 men from Judah, who were equipped with large shields and with spears. They also had 280,000 men from the tribe of Benjamin, who were equipped with rather small shields and bows. They really were not a force to be reckoned with. But they were facing a very large Ethiopian army. There were 1 million Ethiopians who were coming over the hill. And Asa looked at these dark men, 6 feet tall, strong, well armed, with chariots. And Asa decided to pray. Why? Because he was afraid. Asa called to the Lord his God and said, "Lord, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, Lord, our God, for we rely on you. And in your name we have come against this vast army. Lord, you are our God. Do not let mere mortals prevail against us. So the Lord smote the Ethiopians before Asa and before Judah. And the Ethiopians began to flee. And Asa and the people that were with him pursued them down to Gerar. And many of the Ethiopians fell that they could not even recover. They were crushed before the Lord and his forces. You know, we should not dissipate our energy. Let us recognize the place of God in the battles of life. We are commanded to be strong in the Lord and not in ourselves. Ephesians 6 verse 10 says, in conclusion, be strong in the Lord. Be empowered through your union with him. Draw your strength from him, that strength which his boundless might provides. When you trust the Lord, he will grant you many victories. Just depend and trust him. It says 1 Corinthians 15 verse 57 says, but thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. There are times we need to remember that we are where we are because God has allowed it. There are times we need to remember to trust him and trust him wholly. Whether we recognize it or not, this truth is what daily confronts us. We face an enemy in this life that is greater in both power and deceit. None of us can stand against the devil and his demons. The enemy is more than we can handle. My friend, I don't know what you're going through as I stand here today. Your family might be hungry right now. You might have lost employment. Your wife might be thinking of leaving you. I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here to tell you it is not your wife you are fighting. It is not your employer you are fighting. It is evil spirits, powers who are in higher places. But you and I tend to see, of course, the people that we see because we are looking with our physical eyes. We don't see spiritually. When we blame each other for the wrongs that happen in the midst of us, it's because we are looking through our physical eyes. It reminds me of the story of Elisha, who was in Dothan. And whilst he was there, the Assyrians were fighting with the king of Israel in Assyria. And in Samaria, I'm sorry. And the king of Syria was perturbed. Every time he would strategize to get the Israelites into a corner, somehow they would evade him as if they knew exactly what was going to happen. So he decided to think, maybe one of my enemies is within my army. So he called his men of armor and said, please find the spy. There is a spy in our midst. We can't be getting out every morning to fight Israel, only to find the Israelites doing the opposite of what we intended to do to the T. And his men of armor told him, King, there is no spy amongst us, but God has a prophet called Elisha. It doesn't matter whether you are in your bedroom with your wife, King. Elisha is told by God, whilst you are in your bedchambers, what you are doing in your bedchambers. He also tells the king of Israel what your strategy is for each and every day. And then the king asked, what can we do? And he thought the best thing, let's capture Elisha. And so he decided to send an army by nighttime. And at night they went with chariots, surrounded the city of Dothan. In the morning, one of his students went out only to find the hills of Dothan surrounded by an army full of chariots, and they were coming to kill him and Elisha, he thought to himself. And so he says, alas, my Lord, look, what shall we do? We are dead men. The Bible says, and Elisha took him by the shoulder and prayed to the Lord, saying, Lord, open his eyes. And as he opened his eyes, he could see with spiritual eyes. And what he saw amazed him. Surrounding the army of the Assyrians were chariots without number, chariots of fire, armed with angels of God. And then we are told that Elisha prayed and said, Lord, struck them with blindness. And immediately they were blind, every one of them. And he went and said to them, you are at the wrong town. This is not the right town. He led them down to Samaria. And there they met the king of Samaria, the Israelites. He let God open their eyes and they saw. And as they saw, he says to them, let's feed them. Let's entertain them. And so they entertained this large army, gave them food. My Bible tells me that that was the last time Assyria ever attacked Israel again. What do you do with your enemies? Do you pray that God destroys them? Friend, if you pray for anyone's destruction, you don't know God. Because you see, my Bible tells me that vengeance is not yours. Vengeance belongs to God. Let the enemy be. Once somebody has been hit by God and not you, let them be. Befriend them. Be the one who brings them the help. And love them genuinely. You ask yourself, how do I do that? Well, you can only do that when you pray and you fast and you let God lead you. You know, sometimes we get so angry at each other. You would think that we never loved each other, that we don't come from the same family, that we don't all are born of the same blood. We sometimes are so bad that when we destroy each other, he must not survive. That is not of God. You see, if you are in the heat of battle, doesn't matter where you are, or you feel that the enemy is hot behind your heels, and you can feel the sweat going down your neck each time you think about your problem, and you can't really enunciate what it is that bothers you much. remember, there are other brothers and sisters who are in the same condition, and they are fighting together with you. You don't fight this battle alone. There are always others in this battle. The great controversy, if you are standing for the truth, cannot evade you. Satan hates more than anything else the truth. And so if you stand the truth, look for others who are standing for truth. Avoid those who don't stand for truth, because they are the ones who are currently being used, and if you're not strong, you will fall. It reminds me of Elijah, who said, Lord, they've killed everyone, and I'm the only one left. And God says to Elijah, no, Elijah, that's not true. There are 7,000 others who just like you are standing up for me. So Elijah, stop complaining. Get up and stand. Take your position, and I will deliver you. God is in the business of delivery. Your family might look as if it is sinking, but with God, don't worry, it's about to be raised. Don't worry. Your children might think you are the wrong parent. Don't worry. Be the parent that God wants you to be. Because if you don't become the person that God wants you to be, you will be destroyed. I am about to close. I want to close with a personal story. It was in 2011. I was at a board meeting in Orlando West. It was a very difficult board meeting. It was hard. And I left. When I left, I went home. And as soon as I got home, I parked. And suddenly, I saw 7 guys coming towards me with silver guns. All of them silver guns. I said, Lord, help me, for today it doesn't look like it's my day. And as they come close, they hit me on the face with the back of the gun. And they say, open. And I'm thinking to myself, when I left to go to the board meeting, I left my wife in there. I left my granddaughter in there. How do I open for men like this? And I thought to myself, or a thought came, you better be ready to die. And I told them, look, I forgot my keys where I come from. I can't open for you. And they hit me again with the butt of a gun. And as I was staggering, they said, Uzofa wena namhlanje. And I got scared. I started praying, not aloud, but in my heart. They said, who is in the house? I told them it's my wife and my granddaughter. They said, then you better ask your wife to come down. I had my phone with me, but the bad guy in me didn't want to phone my wife. So I told them I don't have a phone. It was like they knew who I was and where I came from. The guy says, I know you have a phone. Call your wife now. So I called my wife. As I call my wife, she's coming down, and as she's coming down, she's saying, and I'm thinking, ish. As soon as she opened, they rushed into my house with guns, and the big guy, their boss or so, I think, was next to me saying, I'm sure you don't want to die today. So please don't make any stupid moves. And they went all over my house, rampaging it, talking nonsensical things and getting phone calls from their girlfriends and saying to their girlfriends, "Ngikutshelile siseKapa, I'm shopping for you. What is wrong with you?" And I'm thinking, is this shopping? Taking from the innocent? I was scared. After they've taken everything, they tied us up. And then they said, "Where are your credit cards?" And we were in a building project. So our limits were 15,000. Now 15,000 at that time, 2011, was a lot of amount. And my wife gave them her PIN number. And then they asked me, I was quiet. I'm thinking 15,000. And my wife looks at me and says, "Sipho, baniki PIN yakho." And so I staggeringly gave them my PIN. And then they said to me, "If we go out here, we're going to leave you with these two guys. And if you've given us the wrong PIN number, one of these guys has instructions to shoot you." And they left. It was around 11:30 at the time. And they took out money at 11:30, 15,000. We waited, nothing. And then at 12:15 they called. We got what we wanted. So they knew that the limit is what? 15,000, and that after 12 is another day. So they took out another 15,000. And then they came back. As they came back, they say, "Mfundis," that's what they call me. "Mfundis." And I'm saying to them, "I'm not a pastor." They say, "No, you are. We see all the Bibles. In every room we went, there was a Bible. You are in Mfundis." And I said, "Okay." And they say, "Mfundis, we want to use your car. Give us the keys." And I had just bought this Mercedes Benz. It was new. And the sinner in me didn't want to let go of the car. And so I'm fighting this guy. I'm saying, "Take the truck, the old van." He says, "Do you want to die tonight?" And my wife says, "Sipho, give him the keys." And so I give the guy the keys. They put all their stuff they'd taken in the house into my own car, and they left. What I'm trying to say to you, you never know what the devil is going to throw at you. But when he does throw it, your survival is dependent on whether you know the true God. I can tell you now that it was not because of my faith, but the faith of my wife. Because if my wife was not there, I probably would have died that night. Because every fiber in me said, I was looking at the little one. One of them was a little small, and I'm saying, I can take that gun from that guy's hand. That's what was ringing in my head. I can take that gun. Thank God for a godly wife. Your problems might be big to you, but they are nothing but a speck of dust to God. If you trust him, he will set you free. If you want to be free indeed, He will make you free. Our God is a stronghold, a tower. David says, when I called God in my troubles, He came and He saved me. Be blessed, and may God bless you.